Esquire's Career Strategies 2 is a personal resource for building a career by changing it. You get direction from the headhunters, the professionals who fit top people to new positions. You get information from the authors who know how to ride the wave of today's fast-changing business world. You cross the interview desk for insight from the people doing the hiring, the chief executive officers of America's most competitive companies. You see career opportunities brought to life by the strictly business players.
And with a special video essay taking a look at the big picture, the inimitable Dick Cavett.
Oh, when I'm working with Richard Hart, the host of the show.
But first, we'll hear from Philip Moffat, editor-in-chief of Esquire magazine.
In his Park Avenue editorial offices, he tracks the concerns of today's America. Lately, he's feeling the new independent spirit driving people's careers.
In today's business world, with all of the rapid change that's occurring, people and jobs are constantly being rematched. People have realized that once they've acquired a certain degree of skill, that skill can be applied in a number of different situations. And once they're in a certain job to a point that it's become a routine, they realize they've got to go on to a new challenge. And sometimes that new challenge may occur within their existing company, and sometimes they may have to go outside. Either way, it works.
All of these people know where they're going on a workday like this one. But how many of them know where they're going in their work lives, their professions, their careers?
What people don't know, or if they know they forget, is that the average job in this country lasts 3.6 years. And that the average person goes job hunting 10 times in their lifetime.
That was Richard Bowles, one of America's most prominent career change experts. I'm Richard Hart, your host on Career Strategies 2. This is about keeping your career on the move and making sure that each new job is a move in the right direction.
Our first stop, the plateau, a place many professionals reach after their first few years in the corporate ranks, a place where career momentum seems to evaporate and advancement slows to a crawl.
Career plateaus are a normal part of most people's professional lives, and so they should not be greeted with a lot of fear or a lot of anxiety. It's just a general part of your career development. If you see it as a problem, generally it will become a problem.
Dr. Robert Kelly is a senior management consultant with Stanford Research Institute. His studies of industrial psychology have helped him to identify some of the telltale signs of job stagnation.
Another sign of a career plateau, psychological sign of a career plateau, is when you're finding yourself sitting in meetings and you're drifting a lot. You're not paying attention to the subject matter. When your peers ask you your ideas, you don't have any new and fresh ideas. Generally, that means that you've run out of steam relative to that job.
Well, I think if they haven't gotten a salary increase in 3 years and their supervisor last spoke to them in January, that they could surmise that they're on a career plateau.
I think some of the other signs, though, are when you just don't feel like coming into work any longer. When you get up in the morning you say, why am I doing this? It generally means that you're on a plateau of some sort.
With me, it was really sort of a boredom level. I mean, I was doing what I was doing, and I thought I was doing it very well. Frankly, in a very specific instance, I'll give you, for instance, there was a fellow that I was very close with who's old enough to be my father. And he was doing what I was doing, and I thought that I did it every bit as good and probably better than he did. And I looked and said, wait a second, do I want to be doing this for the next 30 years? And I knew that the answer was no. But I didn't know specifically what I wanted to do. But I knew that at some point my fuse was going to burn out, and it was going to burn out real fast.
Reflecting on my own career, I set goals, and I checked myself against those goals, about once a year. I remember one time when I was in a position at Colgate-Palmolive for about 4 years, I thought I was near death. I had established goals where I would only be in that position 18 months, and I became very impatient. And a certain executive far above me in the organization said to me, relax, you're going to succeed if you just do what you do best and keep cool. I had 3 promotions in 1 year. So my goal was to go like this, when instead I went like this. And it's all in setting realistic goals, but not being too tight on the dates.
We all want to have a date with success, but we don't want to look too anxious about getting it. Finding the balancing point between moving too little or too much is tricky, but business demands that we keep moving in some direction, as all the people devoted to manufacturing these instruments found out when this little gizmo came along. When your resume hits an employer's desk, you want it to show progress, advancement, and ambition. But you don't want your resume poisoned by too many changes crammed into too little time. Where is the balancing point? Well, let's take a look at 3 different resumes and see what our experts have to say about them. Ellen Cobbs worked a year as a retail sales manager, a year managing a small radio station accounting department, 2 years in a financial software company, and last year as an AVP with a savings and loan. 5 years, 4 jobs, 4 different fields.
Sometimes it gets confusing.
Big red flag. As a matter of fact, anybody who has switched jobs as frequently as every 2 years or every 18 months, it's a big red flag. Because in almost all positions in companies, you cannot complete what you set out to undertake in less than 3 years. Now, there may be other reasons. The company may have gone broke, or it might have been acquired, or a merger, or those things that are explainable. But otherwise, a person usually should stay in that company certainly 3 to 5 years or 3 to 6 years.
15 years ago, Jeffrey Dobbs started as an inventory clerk with a family-owned chain of department stores. Now he's the deputy director of inventory control with the same company, in the same office, even kept the same desk for 15 years.
Hard times?
A person who's been in one job for 15 years has probably shown no ability to move out of it. A person who stayed with one company for 15 years but occupied 3 different positions within that company, where he or she were definitely learning more and contributing more, that's fine. But if a person stayed on that company to 20 years, then you begin to wonder whether they really can adapt to a new environment.
Here's Philip Walters, whose first job was as a junior copy editor in a small southeastern ad agency. Promoted to creative director in 2 years. Spent 5 years as head copywriter for an older agency in Boston, and just celebrated his 4th year as an account executive with an up-and-coming PR group.
Oh, I'm ready. A person that has moved every 5 or 6 years, has been maybe 3 companies over a period of 15 or 20 years, has demonstrated ability to adapt to a new environment, to be able to take on a whole new team of executives that he's probably reporting to be able to take on whole new groups that are used to a different style of operation, and to be able to make an impact and to be able to lead that group forward. The demonstrated ability to adapt is very important.
So, what's the bottom line on building your best employment history? More important than how often you move is a record of solid accomplishment. The general rule suggests a change every 5 or 6 years, but every industry has its own standards, and even those change. In banking, for example, it used to be every 10 to 12 years. By the mid-'80s, it was 8 to 10. So make sure you know the standards for your profession and pace yourself accordingly. As critical as timing is to a professional track record, there is no clock that chimes when you should start looking around. One of the oldest rules of thumb is still one of the best. That bit of executive folk wisdom about being in the right place at the right time, to which today's experts have added recognizing when the right time has arrived and being ready to do something about it. Put yourself into some of the following positions to see how your reactions compare with those of our career specialists.
Here, Harry. Thought you'd enjoy this article in today's journal about our little company. We just been bought by Kagamushi Limited.
If you've just heard that your company's been sold, start moving down 2 paths simultaneously. Learn as much as you can about the acquiring company so that you can assess what are going to be the opportunities for you if you stay with your present company, because very often being acquired by another company will open up tons of opportunities within the parent company. that you might not have had access to if you had stayed in this current company that you're in. So that's one path. The second path you should move down is developing career opportunities outside of your current employer, because you never know when the parent company is going to come in and feel like they just have to clean house, regardless of how talented you are, how much you've contributed to the subsidiary that they've just now bought. And so you should be developing options, either with other companies or with other employers.
Jim, excuse the interruption, but I've got somebody here I know you want to meet. Your new boss, Mr. Vader.
Having a bad boss is one of the worst situations you can get yourself into in your career, because bad bosses tend to produce bad employees. And there's a saying that says, if you have that second-rate bosses produce third-rate employees, first-rate bosses produce first-rate employees. So you always want to get yourself in with a first-rate boss so that you can be brought along as a first-rate employee. So if you're going to get a bad boss, I would suggest start thinking about where can you find a better boss than the one you currently have.
Patty, we're opening up a new field office, and they want you to head it up. Hope you know all the best restaurants in East McKeesport.
You have to think about when you're moving around the circuit in different situations, whether it's a plotted program that has been constructed for you to give you experience in different things, or whether it's a vacancy they had and they had to have somebody desperately to take it, and would you take it? Matter of fact, that has another side to it, and that is that whether if you turn down an offer that's made to you, you still get the opportunities to advance in other ways will tell you about how good you are. Because it's been my observation that the outstanding climber up this mountain can say no to things, and he'll still get a chance at the next one.
And one of my objectives in this new position is to stay in close contact with the top people in our industry. So I wanted to let you know about our project.
You want to be looking for opportunities all the time to meet more people in your company, in your industry, that might be relevant to some future job, and to get to know who they are, and to try to establish not a baloney relationship, you know, how to impress people and con them over in six easy tactics, but simply by being who you are and by doing your job competently, and in any interaction with them, following through in an honest, competent way.
To summarize our look at when to move: when it feels right to you, when it looks right in your profession, and when you've got what it takes to take on more. That's when. Now, here's how. In a typical year in the mid-'80s, IBM had 1 million job applicants and hired fewer than 20,000 of them. At Clorox, it was the same story. 15,000 resumes received, 170 people hired. With odds like those, you don't want to make any mistakes in approaching a prospective employer, especially about an advanced position. A resume is the job seeker's calling card. A badly done resume can mean an early end to your chances, yet a well-done one isn't likely to get you any more than a phone call from someone in personnel.
The resume is a vastly overrated document. It's ostensibly designed to get people jobs, but resumes don't get people jobs. Resumes don't get jobs. Resumes don't open doors. People don't.
Generally speaking, you know, the rules which you'll find in any book on resumes are that it should have lots of white space around it, it shouldn't look crowded, it shouldn't have misspellings. But all those anybody can figure that out. I mean, they're going to look at the resume to see what they can learn about you, and they're going to bring to the resume, the employer is going to bring to the resume his or her fears.
Richard Bowles is the author of what's become the Job Seeker's Bible. What Color is Your Parachute is a best-selling guide covering every step a prospective employee should take toward a new position. It describes the resume from your perspective. Then there's the employer's perspective to keep in mind.
When I look at resumes, I like to see simplicity, cleanliness, well-defined goals, not a lot of BS, a lot of facts. We can all tell by a resume whether it's inflated or not. It's not important to inflate it. Keep it brief. I think that's more important than anything else.
First of all, a resume should be complete. That doesn't mean it should be long nor short. My own feeling is that it should be about two pages, single-spaced. 1 page is too short, and more than 2 pages might not all get read. But you want it complete. There shouldn't be conspicuous information conspicuously absent, like year of graduation from college, or even age, although it's not required, of course, and cannot be required. Companies that you worked for, the dates, the titles, the responsibilities, and the accomplishments should all be there. Also should be there the products. I often get resumes that, hey, I worked for the Acme company in Wisconsin. I haven't any foggiest idea what the Acme company produces, and I increased the sales such and such and such and such. So if you describe the products that you handle at that company, make sure all the detail is there. It can be very concise, but make sure it's there.
And I think that the more information that one can put in their resume that indicates how much responsibility they've had, where they've made a difference. You only capture someone's attention for just a few moments as they're looking at a resume. And if you can very concisely state what it is that you did in your past job that made a difference, and do it in 1 or 2 very cogent points, then you've really got a resume that's going to stand out. And I think that's one of the overriding criteria that I look for.
Resumes are a very individual thing. They're just like dating. You can go out on a date with one girl or one man who's just gaga about you, and you can go out on a date with another one that is yawning in your face all evening long, and you can say, what's the difference? I'm the same person. But you met one person who's turned on to who you are, and you met one who wasn't. Same thing with resumes. Resumes work when they meet the person who is turned on by them.
Despite all the information available about what constitutes a good resume, some people are convinced that they can buck the conventions and get an advantage by being different. One person, for example, made a label out of her resume and put it on a bottle of Chardonnay. Good for a laugh, but not for a job. In the end, the greatest value from keeping your resume true to form and up to date is the value you accrue by continually clarifying your own thinking about the fit between your accomplishments and your goals.
Larson, good morning. This is Putney Westerfield calling from Boyden Associates in San Francisco. How are you this morning?
A cold call from someone who's been stalking you for some time. He knows your skills. He knows your accomplishments. He knows your phone number. There's nothing sinister going on. You've simply gotten far enough up the corporate ladder to attract attention from outside your company.
Now, your name has come to our attention as somebody who's had an excellent track record, both in marketing and general management, and might be ready in the next year or two to move up to that top job.
Putney Westerfield is an executive recruiter. He's had an impressive career of his own, including a stint as publisher of Fortune magazine. Now he's what's known as a professional headhunter. He's building impressive careers for other people. How impressive? Most of his corporate clients have retained him to attract the best candidates for positions in the range of $70,000 a year and up.
We want to find the best person for the company that's going to succeed there. We don't want to find the best person that's going to grate everybody there and not last very long. So a lot of attention is spent in the search to the personal chemistry, to the style, how that person will fit into the company. Then we come back to the office, we meet with our research staff, we brainstorm, how are we going to do this search? We'll look into our own data bank and our own computer, where we have tens of thousands of people that we know personally, we know their credentials, we have graded them. We also go through all the directories that are available to find out who's doing what in that industry. We talk to our fellow recruiters in our company that have done comparable searches, and therefore we pull together all this information, and we come up with a list of usually several hundred people that we want to contact.
As flattering as a call from someone like Putney Westerfield might be, it doesn't mean he's trying to help you. He's working for a company that needs a very special employee. You still need to convince him that you're that person.
When a person gets their first call from a executive recruiter, my advice is to be courteous, to be helpful, to be open, be trusting. We all work with highly confidential information, but they should be very, 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 very trusting. I think it's important that an individual look upon the recruiter as an ally and a friend for the future.
Even though headhunters aren't really working for you, that doesn't mean you can't make use of them.
If a headhunter calls me, usually I'll talk to them, and perhaps I'll go out on an interview. If nothing else, as an informational interview for myself to say, what am I worth in the market? You know, I may be worth X in my company, I may be worth 3X in the market.
I also have found it important to get to know a few of the more important executive recruiters. It's just good business. You never can tell when you might need them or when they might need you.
An individual who's interested in moving is just increasing the odds that they're going to find the right position and the best position for themselves if they do write the executive recruiting firms, as well as look in the newspaper ads for a position, and of course network themselves. They're networking through their friends and their contacts.
Helping an executive recruiter is a great way to help yourself find out about the marketplace or get a better job. Excuse me. Hello? Yes, this is Mr. Hart. Yes. How can I help you? We talked about being in the right place at the right time and having the right skills on hand. Now let's talk about another famous factor in career advancement, knowing the right people. At one time it was left to chance, but today it is a calculated technique for making sure you're known to the people who can help you move. The technique is known as networking. Now, if networking were a sport, this might be its Super Bowl. This is the South Street Seaport, just a few blocks from Wall Street.
There's got to be networking down there. There's got to be people meeting each other for the first time and people introducing friends to each other. There would have to be.
The whole world operates on networking. We don't realize that. But anything we really want to accomplish has to be done almost always through other people. At its simplest, that is networking.
Networking tip number 1, keep in touch with old friends and colleagues.
I went to visit my friend, and his boss talked to me and said, I know a place you should go work.
Oh, yeah?
And I went down there, and I was interviewed, and I got the job.
I think the best way to look at the results of networking is to put yourself in a position of having a critical job to fill. And you have 20 candidates. They all look great on paper, but one of them you've met at a cocktail party, you've met at a function, you've heard as a speaker. That person is going to immediately raise themselves from the mass of the other people who may be equally, if not more, competent.
Networking tip number 2, join professional and industry organizations.
Meeting people in your daily work, dealing with outside auditors, lawyers, your outside experts would definitely give you insight into other positions, whereabouts. It's pretty much a world now of people. It's not more just an institution and applying. It's the more that you know, the more who you know, is the better that you go.
You can never have too many friends or too many acquaintances, or you can never collect too many business cards.
Knowing people will help you get your foot in the door, but if you don't know what you're doing once you get in there, it's not going to help you, because they're going to kick you right out.
Networking tip 3, don't build a web of phony baloney relationships, but a network of people you honestly get along with.
Oh, sure. It takes a tremendous risk out of a new hire. A new hire is a very, very scary kind of thing. There's a lot riding on it. And you don't want any failures. And so if you have that extra insurance that somebody that you trust, somebody whose opinion you value says, I've worked with this person before and boy are they great. She's the best person I work with at that agency, or he's the best guy that they had in that company. It takes so much pressure off. And then you kill whoever's wrong.
When it's finally time for you to make your move, your interview skills become some of the most important you possess. In the spirit of a championship chess match, you'll want your every move to be carefully planned because your future hinges on it. But this is no game. If you and your interviewer are well matched, both of you will win. Jan Dinerstein is an interview counselor who helps job seekers prepare for these critical encounters. She can tell you what you should expect to face in the interview. Kurt Einstein works on the other side of the table, teaching managers how to handle the interview. By listening to what he tells managers, you can understand what's really going on across the desk during your interview.
The interviewee should rehearse for an interview by addressing the questions that they project will be asked in a written form. I feel that they should outline the responses to their questions and actually rehearse, either by themselves or with someone else, what their responses will be.
The more the manager prepares himself, the better he can conduct the interview. A manager should have an agenda. He should know what he wants to talk about, what are important things which have to be clarified.
There are 5 questions that will be asked in almost any interview in some form that a candidate should be prepared to answer, and they would include your goals, your strengths, your weaknesses. Why would you be interested in this position? And why would you be interested in leaving your current employer? A candidate should have the responses to those questions well rehearsed and be prepared to articulate them as professionally as possible.
No matter how long an interview lasts, it's said what counts is how it starts.
I think that it is true that in the first 5 minutes of the interview, the decision of whether or not the person will integrate well into the organization from a chemistry standpoint is made. And in the next 55 minutes, the interviewer is going to probe some of the technical questions that will confirm that decision. Rarely, if the first 5 minutes of the interview start on a bad foot, can you recover.
When I teach executives how to interview, I ask them to kind of hold their horses, not make a decision, not let an impression get in the way, because otherwise what we are doing is we are either pursuing a halo effect when we are favorably impressed with the person, which interferes in a rational decision, or when we are unfavorably impressed, we are dredging up all kinds of information to reinforce our unfavorable initial impression.
Stripped of all its emotional overtones, what you and your interviewer want is information.
In the first interview, the questions that an interviewee should ask would include questions about the specific job that they are interviewing for. They should speak to the current employer about what the responsibilities are of the position, what the expectations are, short-term and long-term, of the incumbent to the position, what the management style is of the company, and should learn about the person who the position reports to and what their expectations are. They should learn why the position is open and develop a good feel for the organization to the best that they can.
And the manager is trying to find out who you are.
One is learns a great deal about an individual by knowing his likes or her likes and dislikes of things to do and of people, especially if it isn't just a questions what do you like or what you don't like, but that if after each answer comes a follow-up question which is why is that? Why don't you like? Why do you like? That produces a great deal of information, and one gets like a mosaic, a picture very quickly about the individual's strengths and weaknesses.
Another important moment for both of you is how the interview ends.
The candidate should ask the question at the end of the interview, do you have any specific concerns or questions about my background that I can answer for you? If there has been a miscommunication in the meeting, this will give the candidate an opportunity to re-clarify any particular subject.
And when it's over, do you know where you stand? No.
An interview must end on an up note all the time. Even if the manager has decided that he wouldn't touch that person with a 10-foot pole.
No interview will be exactly like any other, but in any interview there are certain definite things to do and not to do.
Hobbies. Well, the usual, reading, a little tennis, that sort of thing. But I have a real passion for ice skating. I started in college and, well, never stopped. It's the concentration and the challenge. No matter how good I get, I know I can always get better.
I think that perhaps as important or more important than hobbies or extracurricular activities are indications of leadership and accomplishment outside the work environment.
And now before we get down to the job, I need to know if we're playing in the same salary ballpark.
Questions of salary should be reserved until there is a commitment on the part of both the company and the candidate that the notion of them getting together is promising. And at that time, they should talk about what the actual salary is for the position.
Well, you know, I was at Harvard a couple of years, months actually, but I did make a number of contacts that summer.
One final point on resumes and in interviewing, and that word is honesty. An individual who is foolish enough to put a phony degree, college degree, in a resume, or to exaggerate accomplishments that didn't really take place. If anything there that is cannot be verified, because they will be verified, that person has ruined their reputation with that recruiting firm and is bound to spread elsewhere.
If you have to have more than one meeting, meet with more than one company executive, then it's likely you're one of the few candidates still being considered. It's now that you'll have to get ready to negotiate your compensation.
And there are all kinds of negotiations, of course. They all have a slightly different character. Negotiating strategies need to be developed so that you know ahead of time what it is you're trying to achieve and how you achieve it.
Negotiations can be a tough game, and for your first move, you should think tough.
People do not take the time to be honest with themselves or when they're really going to walk away from the table. Because once into the negotiation, emotions rise so high that you lose some degree of your objectivity. And if you've been through that analysis before and put it down on a piece of paper to be honest with yourself, then you're going to be in a much better position and you know what you can give away and you legitimately do know where you're going to walk away. And I think people sense that. Rather than coming in with a lot of hoopla and bravado, again, take some time to think about it before you go in.
So know what you want and what you'll do if you don't get it.
What you have to be willing to do when your boss comes back and either says no or gives you a counter offer at less than what you think is applicable, you've got to be willing to walk. If you don't walk, you change your position substantially in the environment, and I think you lose a lot of the self-respect you perhaps have created for yourself as a person of principle.
There are times when the corporation needs someone in a certain job or in a certain city at a certain time that that is where they are vulnerable. The corporation is vulnerable, and the employee has a leg up on the negotiations, and they will agree to go to South Dakota or to Istanbul if there's a decent sort of a salary increase in it for them, or if there's a promotional opportunity of some sort, and that certainly happens.
A good negotiation or a good settlement means you're both satisfied, and you both need to win, and that's not impossible.
Many executives don't negotiate for their compensation, but for authority. If they gain that, the salary will follow.
I have a personal philosophy, and that is when we're talking about my compensation, I don't even want to talk, I don't want to say anything about it. I want the number of times I have had to do anything remotely resembling negotiation, I can count on 2 fingers in 16 years. I really believe that you build your track record and you let the company deal with your compensation. And if they're not dealing with you in a way that you think is appropriate for any length of time, then you talk about it. And if you're not happy with the answer, you leave.
Congratulations. You've got the position you wanted. You've made your move. But don't head for the Ferrari showroom just yet. There's a critical period still ahead.
It begins with the first week.
The first task is to learn as much and everything as you can about the position you're in by talking to people, meeting the people you're going to deal with and work with, introduce yourself, and understand the relationship that needs to exist there in order to make it happen. And while you're doing this, you have to look at the things that require attention, that need to be moved, so that you don't let things fall behind while you're catching up, because you get yourself in a hole right away.
And that at the first meeting you should say very little, if anything, but you should begin to say things in the second meeting. If you wait too long, you will get uncomfortable and it'll become a big challenge. When am I going to do it? And if you make a decision that you're not going to say much in the first meeting, but the second meeting you're going to at least say something in a humble way, and the third meeting you're going to say 2 or 3 things, then you ease yourself in a transitional way into a new environment.
When the preliminaries are settled, you enter a second period of adjustment, the first few months and the start of the long haul.
Once you learn what the business is about, then you must go into very careful understanding of what's required of you from careful discussions with your boss. What is he trying to do? What are the objectives, and what does he expect you to do? And see if you can get him to lay out carefully at the beginning precisely what he expects you in the time frames with which he'd like to do it. Because that gives you a game plan which you can work against, so that he won't turn around 2 months from now and say, well, you were pretty stupid to go do this. I don't see why you spent a lot of time on that.
I think that you should look for ways to improve the performance of the position, improve your performance in the position, and start to relate to the others around with whom you deal, and look for things that you can suggest that are going to improve everything.
So, after the first 2 months or so, the worst is over. But remember, statistics indicate you'll be in your new job just 3.5 years, and that you'll go through the process of search, change, and adjustment an average of 10 times during your life. So enjoy your new office, but don't get too comfortable in it, and don't forget where you filed that resume. Welcome to what we call our video essay. Let's take a moment from the details of career strategies for a fun look at the big picture. To achieve a really successful career, almost everyone agrees you need 2 common senses, a sense of humor and a sense of perspective. And the man who has plenty of both is our video essayist, Dick Cavett.
There's a subtle tension at work in the material we've been discussing. It's a tension that's right under the surface. Anytime you talk about changing jobs, tension caused by 2 opposing impulses. On the one hand, we feel we should act as individuals, and on the other hand, we owe allegiance to our organization. If you feel this tension, welcome to America, because it's sewn into the whole fabric of the country. Think about that primal American myth, the Western movie. Every Western has the town dwellers, the good, necessary, solid joiners, the salt of organization America. They're down here in the smaller print category. Ben Jonson, Edgar Buchanan. The hero is the loner, the man who comes to town, does what needs to be done, and rides off. Now, both traditions have a long history in America, but in the 20th century, we've tended to emphasize the solid joiner, and this tends to put many employees in the small print mode. Whatever the reason, a brief look at how the Western plays in modern America gives us a slightly cockeyed view of the state of the would-be lone hero today. A mysterious stranger rides alone, a solitary figure as he approaches the Western town. The long ride has taken its toll, but he stops for no man. He goes his own way. The glint in his eyes, the quiet, even stride, tells everyone he's in town to take care of business. And when his business is done, well, he'll ride on. Okay, so we can't all be Shane these days, but it is easy to just join the crowd and hide out in the safety of the organization. When it comes to planning a career move, it's probably better to think less like the Western bit player and more like all those lone heroes. The real point of all those knights of the West was this. They portrayed men so confident of their abilities that they didn't feel they needed the constant support of some group. That may be a little strong for business today, but there is still something in it. You have to come to the realization that you needn't totally rely on an organization. You have a body of skills that you can move from one job to another. Oh, one last note from a horse opera. In the 50s, the exemplar of the lone Western hero was a steely dude named Paladin, and his business card reads, "Have gun, will travel." Yours should probably say, "Have abilities, will travel." Vaya con Dios.
We're about to cover some of the assets, opportunities, and possible problems you're likely to face as you advance further up the executive corridor, beginning with insights into some of the most important friends you'll ever have. Talk about success. Odysseus' performance at Troy made him one of the most successful heroes in Greek mythology. But who knows what he would have accomplished without the counsel of his wise friend named Mentor. Today, mentors are still an important feature on the professional landscape, especially after a job change has put you into a new work environment. And a long-term mentor can provide one of your most powerful career alliances for future moves. But mentors aren't standard fringe benefits. You can't post a notice in the employee lounge that says, "Looking for mentor, please call extension 502. Kathy Cram of Boston University's School of Management has studied the mentor relationship and published a book entitled Mentoring at Work.
To find a mentor, the first thing is to do good work.
The first thing is not to go into an organization and look for, where's my mentor? The first thing is to keep your nose to the grindstone, do a damn good job, and that mentor tends to appear over a period of time.
The second thing is to put yourself in positions where you have the opportunity to show that work to potential mentors.
I've had a mentor all my life, in every phase of my life, in every job. I perhaps maybe not now, but certainly in the early years of my life, either in law firms or outside the budget rent-a-car. And it wouldn't have been those places but for somebody who saw something that I could offer, and I followed, I went, they watched, and opportunities came. I did my best job, and I was there. I always made sure I was right there and very visible. and the door opened.
And then finally, I think it would be important to recognize what you have to offer potential mentors. For example, junior people offer technical support as well as psychological support to their mentors. So if you can see what you have to offer and really make that evident to your senior people, then they're more likely to want to mentor you.
I do believe mentoring is important. It's important for making your career and breaking it, because you may well find yourself with a mentor that has been wonderful for you for 5 or 6 years. And mentoring is a two-way street. You've got to deliver to your mentor. You know, there's no such thing really as a free lunch.
And I think the best thing that mentors can do is to tell the truth. And I think that whenever a mentor can really be very honest with a young person who's coming through the ranks by saying, you know, you're really doing these 5 things right, but this is one area that you're just not doing the kinds of things that you ought to be doing, you know, to really make it. Where you can get those kinds of relationships and very direct dialogues with a mentor is where I think a young person can really prosper and grow.
Well, I don't really think I've ever had a mentor. And I keep reading about mentor relationships, so I feel deprived.
Despite the opportunities that a mentor can provide, there are potential problems with such a relationship.
The biggest downside that I see is the danger of putting all one's eggs in one basket, so to speak. That is, if you rely on one mentor to coach you and guide you and take care of your career, you're likely to be very disappointed and may even be turned against at some point if something political occurs which puts your mentor out of favor with the organization. That can really hurt your career.
Now really stretch your sense of your own possibilities. What about leaving the shelter of the organization altogether? For a significant number of us, a job change means a move away from the large corporate environment. But you don't have to make a clean break. Many successful independents are on their own without leaving the corporate world. They work as consultants.
This is Robert Kelly, consultant with the Stanford Research Institute. In the environment most consultants know best, the airport. In a typical year, he'll travel as much as 300,000 miles to reach clients that are continents apart. His experience has taught him that successful consultants have to thrive on more than airplane food.
The first is a curiosity. They really get intrigued by a problem, and they want to work on that problem. That's all they want to work on. A second is they have a high need for variety. They don't like to just stay with one job over and over, day after day. Instead, they like to work on one project, and when it's done, start on a new and different one. And rather than just work for one company, they like to work for several companies simultaneously. So it's a high need for variety. Consultants also have to be self-starters. They have to be able to go on their own, because very often they're doing the work unsupervised and they're on their own on a daily basis. And I think finally, consultants have to have a high tolerance for ambiguity in that you walk into a new situation, you don't know who these people are, you don't know really what the problem is, and yet you've got to be able to adapt very quickly and do the job.
Very seldom at home when you're a consultant. Work long hours, terribly long hours. Weekends, Saturdays and Sundays mean nothing. They're just another day in the schedule. Because as a consultant, you're selling time. That's what you have to sell. And consequently, every minute of time you can put in means more billings and better returns for the consultant organization.
So that's the life of a consultant, which is different from an entrepreneur, where you're married to that company and you're there 14 hours a day. Instead, a consultant is 14 hours a day meeting client concerns.
So if you like long hours but not long distances, you might want to consider the entrepreneurial route to career independence. In a little over a decade, Marshall Cox rose from the sales divisions, first of Fairchild Semiconductor and later Raytheon, to the presidency of Intersil Incorporated. But in 1977, he traded success and security for the risks and rewards of starting his own company, Western Microtechnology.
I wanted to make a lot of money, and I wanted to make it on a capital gains basis. Two, I had a need to do my own thing. I didn't want interference from anybody above me. And third was a need to develop these products that had never been built, that I felt strongly could be built and would be successful.
According to the experts, the words, "I feel strongly," are the keys to the entrepreneurial kingdom.
Well, we look for those people, not people that are just coming in and saying, I want to make $1 million, but people that come in and talk about not how they make their money, but what the mission of the company is. I mean, what is that religion that they want to impart? What's the philosophy? What's their manner of doing business? Why does the world need what they're going to do? What's the contribution that they're making to the world? And when you find those people that have that sort of, again, fire in their belly, that they really do want to go out and change things. They're frustrated. They've been at a big company. They haven't been able to get anything done. And they've got a vision that they want to get something done. Our firms, fundamentally, I always say, we're suckers for entrepreneurs.
The best tip I could give to a young man that's starting his career relative to the opportunities of becoming an entrepreneur is, please be warned that you hear the good stories, but 90% of the potential entrepreneurs don't make it. If you don't have certain almost personality or character traits, you may want to reconsider before you jump in becoming an entrepreneur. Secondly, maybe more important, before you jump, even if you have them, you better make damn sure you're very well capitalized. And if you do your business plan and you think you're going to make money in 12 months, you better have enough money to go 24 months without generating any revenue, because if you run out, you're in deep trouble.
We've just about reached the end of this Esquire's success tape about changing jobs in a changing world. We want to encourage you to look through these electronic pages again. They've been designed with just that sort of repeat exposure in mind. And to look through the resources section at the very end of our hour. I think you'll find the tools described there helpful in making your next move. I'm Richard Hart, wishing you the best of success and leaving you with a collection of advice for your future from some of the most successful career experts in the country today.
The ideal thing for anybody that's considering a job is to pick an industry that's a rapidly growing industry, to pick a company that's clearly going to be a winner in that industry, and to pick a company against whom that individual's skills match up perfectly. That company needs that person's skills in a real bad way. If you get those three ingredients, it's terrific. Any one of those three is probably sufficient to be successful.
And when I'm asked what's been most important in my own career, I think my sense of humor has probably helped me through more difficult situations and has helped me to make a difference in being the only woman in a business environment that has been populated by men.
I would encourage you to get in touch with yourself and to compare yourself within the culture of the company that you want to enter, and make certain that the goals you have set for yourself are realistic and that the company that you're moving into has the potential to deliver to you with achievement the goals you're seeking.
Whatever position you're in or whatever job you go to or whatever you're doing, you have to do good work. And by good work, I mean it has to be high quality, it needs to be thorough and complete. And when you get done and you give it to the boss, there shouldn't be anything left to question or do.
I would say asking questions, being curious. Why? Why do we do this? Why do we do this way? Can we find a better way? Rather than just taking everything as given and as something that is never going to be capable of being changed.
There's a piece of advice from one of my best friends who now runs his own advertising agency, gave me when I was just getting out of the military and going to work. And he said, I'll give you a tip. He said, spend all your working hours on the things that will move the business ahead, and if you have to use your weekends and your personal time to get the day-to-day drudgery done, do it then. But he said, the job really gets down to what's going to move the business ahead. And those are the things to focus on, and I thought that was great advice.
I can't exaggerate the importance of patience and the importance of paying your dues. Corporations are worlds unto themselves. Corporations have their own ethos, their own traditions, their own morality, their own needs. In almost every corporation, it is absolutely vital to be perceived as being loyal to that corporation, of paying your dues, of doing your work, putting up with the stuff that nobody else wants to do, of earning your stripes, in essence.
If I have just one bit of advice to give anybody who wants to live a happy and productive life, it's this. Be yourself. Nobody else is qualified.
Welcome to our resource guide, our suggestions for places to look to continue your study of career strategy. What Color is Your Parachute by Richard Bowles, annually updated to keep you abreast of the latest in career planning and job-changing theory. Where Do I Go From Here with My Life by Richard Bowles and John Crystal, a workbook designed to pinpoint and develop professional strengths. Sweaty Palms, The Neglected Art of Being Interviewed by Anthony Medley, a plan of action once you get that job interview. You Can Negotiate Anything. Author Herb Cohen shows you how the principles of negotiation can help you get the compensation you want. The Book of Perks by James Baylor makes a perfect companion for You Can Negotiate Anything. Be informed about the extras. Mentoring at Work by Kathy Cram. Know the pros and cons of this complex relationship before an opportunity presents itself. Parting Company, How to Survive the Loss of a Job and Find Another Successfully by William J. Morin and James Cabrera, an effective tool for the executive with eyes toward new horizons. Executive Pursuit by Charles Fleming, a guide to utilizing headhunters on the job search. We also recommend the following periodicals to help you keep track of the changing tides in business. Esquire's Smart Money section, a monthly condensation of the latest trends in finance and careers. Harvard Business Review, updates and forecasts by the nation's top business seers. And The Best of Business, a semi-annual review of the state of corporate affairs. And of course, there's the complete Esquire Success Series. Stay on the cutting edge with savvy counsel from America's leading experts in men's fashion, the world of wine, cooking for time-pressed professionals, persuasive speaking, and career strategies. The Esquire Success videotapes are available at major retailers. Write us or call us. We'd like to hear from you.